Okay, there's my bio, which hopefully y'all have seen previously. So we're going to be discussing part 3 of my Intro to Louisville History series. Previously, we've done part 1 and part 2. And so this is more just a general introduction to Louisville history. It's kind of a broad brush. I won't be getting into too many details. Part 1, which I presented several months ago, we started early history, why the city of Louisville is here due to geography and the Ohio River. We talked about the indigenous people that lived prior to the Europeans coming here. Then we talked about the settlement, how the Europeans came in, built forts and all of that. John Floyd built up various things. Downtown Louisville, Abraham Lincoln coming here. A lot of history, the first all the way up to 1861 at the start of the Civil War. Then part 2 was just 60 years of Louisville history from 1862 to 1923. Talked about the Civil War battles. Talked about Louisville developing, becoming a major manufacturing center here in the South. How the park system developed and all that. So that was part 2. And so now let's talk about part 3. We're going to start in 1924. That was 100 years ago. And that's what Churchill Downs looked like at the Kentucky Derby of 1924.
Look at all those old cars, that was cool.
But one of the big things that was going on in Louisville in the early, and the rest of the country in the early 1900s was the Jim Crow laws and segregation. And our parks system was segregated in 1924. That was, again, 100 years ago. And there was a letter to the Courier-Journal editor by 19 distinguished black activists who decried the parks being segregated. Up until that point, all the Olmsted parks were integrated. Blacks and whites could go anywhere they wanted to in the parks. But in 1924, the city council decided to segregate the parks as part of the Jim Crow laws that were going on nationally at the time. Here is some of the distinguished African Americans who struggled against the Jim Crow laws. James Bond, the upper left there, he was the grandfather to Julian Bond, who was a Georgia legislator. Harvey Russell, who the Russell neighborhood is named after. I. Willis Cole, he fought segregation of housing back in those days. Some more civil rights related activities in the early 1900s. Very bad period in our history. Here was downtown Louisville in 1926. Kind of changed a little bit. Charles Lindbergh came here in 27 after going to the Spirit of St. Louis over to Paris, France. If you notice, he could not see out the front of his airplane. In fact, he had a little telescope inside the cockpit that he would look through to look straight ahead. But most of the times he would look out the side windows.
Wow.
And it was a flying gas tank. It was just totally filled with fuel. He had to have all his fuel to fly all the way across. Can you imagine miscalculating how much fuel he needed? So he was very brave. Then the stock market crash of 1929, and the Depression began. Shortly after that, the Clark Memorial Bridge downtown opened up. We know it on the Louisville side as the 2nd Street Bridge, but on the Indiana side they call it the Clark Memorial, because they don't have a 2nd Street over there. There it is being built.
Oh, that's cool.
And they painted it yellow not too long ago, kind of brightens it up.
The old Butter Bridge.
Yeah, that's good. Prohibition was repealed. It started in 1919. Prohibition, but it was repealed in 1933. Notice the mug of this one woman that she's raising. I'm hoping she did not drink all of that herself.
That's my kind of
She
girl.
loved happy hour. I didn't recognize it as a mug.
Then the 1937 flood, everything that you see there in the light green shade was underwater. So Louisville was pretty much inundated by the 37 flood. And it crested January 27th, 1937. So that was, if we were doing our math, it was 87 years ago that that happened. So you can see where they it flooded the water company for the water, but they kept the water flowing because they tied up this steamboat here that powered the generators, and there were Louisville Water Company workmen on the inside there, so they kept the water flowing in Louisville even though it was cut off due to the flood.
How long was it flooding?
The flood lasted several weeks into early February. Then Broadway, here's a before and after. So it flooded Broadway. Here's some more photographs of Broadway area flooding. And the west end of Louisville really got hit hard. You see the old St. X High School there in the upper left-hand corner. The Ford plant out on Southwestern Parkway. Butchertown neighborhood totally flooded. Jeffersonville, Indiana, again totally flooded. If you go over to Jeffersonville, at the end of the Big Ford Bridge, they have these pylons that indicate how high the water was. So you can see the color changed from a dark green to a light green at the top. And here over at Ship's Confectionery, the little red arrows there indicated where the 37 flood crested. So yeah, I pretty much covered Jeffersonville.
Soggy pastries.
Yes, soggy, yes. Lincoln walking on the water.
Yeah, I love that picture.
Me too.
And this photograph is kind of deceptive. The water actually went up higher over his feet. In fact, you can see the water line here on the foundation. And the photographer waited for the water to go down to take that photograph. So he was kind of smart about that. He saw the water up over his feet, so I'll just wait till it goes down. Yeah. So then after the 37 flood, we went into World War II. Due to the invasion of Normandy, France there in the upper left-hand corner. I always like to talk about what I call the Belknap twins, Charles Mormon and Morris Mormon. They were the grandsons of William Burke Belknap, who started the Belknap hardware company. Belknap, some of you may recall, was a very major industry here in Louisville. I compare them to Walmart. Because they provided all the goods and services to the rural districts out in the beyond the city is what Belknap catered to, just like Walmart does. Only Walmart owns the stores. Belknap did not own the stores. They just provided the merchandise. So Walmart was able to survive because they owned the stores. But we'll see if they can last 146 years like Belknap did.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, there were two grandsons of the founders of Belknap. They were Charles Mormon and Morris Mormon, and they were very patriotic. They were in college at the time down at Sewanee University down in Tennessee, and they realized that the war was coming to an end in 1944. And so they just volunteered, just out of the blue. They were millionaires, by the way. They were very wealthy individuals. They just volunteered and went in as privates in the U.S. Army. And they were there in Normandy, France. Now, they weren't part of the original invasion. They went in a few weeks later. It took a couple of months for them to get from Normandy into Paris. It was a very slow slog to get from Normandy to Paris, France. And so in August of 1944, both of them were killed. They were in. It said there that they killed Norman. They were in two different divisions, but they were killed 2 weeks apart. Can you imagine their mother? Her name was Lily Belknap Mormon, and getting that knock on that door just 2 weeks apart. That both her twin sons were killed, and their names are down on the World War II memorial there that you see there. It is down below. So kind of a tragic tale of the Belknap family and World War II that many Louisvillian families experienced in that tragic era. 1947, Stanford Field opens. By the way, Stanford Field actually started out as a military base, military airfield, and then once the war was over, then the military gave it to the city, Stanford Field. And the reason why it's called Stanford Field, it was because Elijah Stanford owned that property. He died in 1887, I think, prior to the Wright brothers flying a plane. So he had an airfield named for someone that didn't even know planes existed. So Stanford Field.
That's funny.
And then streetcars, a lot of people like to reminisce about the streetcars, but the last streetcar operated, 76 years ago, if my math is correct, in 1948. Derby Day of 1948 is when the last streetcar. So you went out to the track at Churchill Downs on a streetcar that day, and you rode home on a bus. They took all the streetcars away during the Derby. Being an architect, I always like to talk about my architectural peers, and Frank Lloyd Wright is probably the most famous American architect, and he visited Louisville on May 28th, 1948. The only Frank Lloyd Wright building in the state of Kentucky is in Frankfort, the Ziegler House, which is pictured there in the upper left-hand corner. But he did propose 2 homes here in Louisville, the Davies House in Cherokee Triangle, and then the Franklin House in Fern Creek, but neither of those houses were built. 1944 is when the old post office was demolished here.
Jim
It's a
Heasey.
shame.
What's that again?
I just said it's a shame.
I know. Well, this is where I think we started to lose our quality of downtown buildings, because up to this point, whenever we tore down a nice building, we would replace it with a nice or a similar, nicer or better building. But here we replaced this old distinctive post office with a parking garage. So I always say replace a landmark with a landmark.
Yep.
So urban renewal started in the 1950s, and everything you see there in yellow has been demolished in downtown Louisville.
Oh,
We pretty much wiped out downtown, yeah. And that's what downtown Louisville looks like now. So I can kind of go back a bit if I can. There, oh, back. There we go. So, some of the distinctive buildings that we lost, some of the landmark buildings that we tore down for not too good a reason in my estimation. Here's a good example. This was down at 3rd and Main, I believe. Yeah, 3rd and Main, or 2nd and Main. And they tore down this group of buildings here that you see for a parking lot. So again, we wiped out, in my estimation, we wiped out billions of dollars of property and replaced it with basically zero investment parking lots. Not sure who the financial wizard was back then figuring this out, but we lost a lot of tax revenue because of it. Here's another good example, 9th Street. That's 9th Street looking south, and you can see all the buildings in the top picture there, 1926, and what it looks like in 1976. Totally wiped all of those buildings, and that pretty much was the African American district, the business district. Totally wiped their businesses out. One more image here. This is in 1900, this is called a figure ground. Everything that you see in dark there in black were buildings. Then in 1990, just 90 years later, you can see how the black has disappeared and more white look. So again, we wiped out a lot of nice buildings in the process. They call it urban removal, not so much urban renewal. Always like to mention the Parrish family. They were a prominent African American family, educators. Charles Parrish Sr. Was a professor and led Simmons College down in the old Louisville district, and his son, Charles Parrish Jr., was the first African-American professor at the University of Louisville in the early 1950s. They were very prominent African-Americans. I know a number of the Parrish family, and they still are. One of their descendants was a professor out in California. Then we kept doing manufacturing, and General Electric Appliance Park. The first clothes dryer started February 6, 1953. That's what, 71 years ago, if I'm doing the math properly. And you can see there were 6 major buildings there. My father, my dad, he worked in what was called Building 3. That was the dishwasher and disposal building, which they still make dishwashers there at Appliance Park, and they still are doing pretty well. We also built the Kentucky Fair and Exposition Center in the mid-1950s. The upper right-hand corner was the original proposal of what Freedom Hall and the fairgrounds were supposed to look like, and then of course this is how it was actually built. So somewhat similar in concept with the arena there, Fairground Stadium. We spent many a day there at various circuses, ball games, you name it, they had it. And I think the upper left-hand corner, that was a Billy Graham revival that was being held at Freedom Hall. Had a lot of folks there back then. Also want to mention P.O. Sweeney, Pruitt Owsley Sweeney. He led the charge in the mid-1950s to reintegrate the parks system and other cultural aspects of Louisville. He was a very wealthy businessman and had the money to fight the white establishment at that time. He filed lawsuits against them. Basically, he said that, hey, blacks, you're using our tax money to operate these parks, but we can't go and use those parks. And believe it or not, he actually won those lawsuits. So he was able to reintegrate the parks back in the mid-1950s. One thing that Louisville has forgotten about, we were a major tobacco center back in the 50s, 60s, and even 70s. We had a lot of tobacco companies here. Paul Hornung was a major sports star here. He won the Heisman Trophy in 1956. We have a statue to him downtown.
He's an egotistical,
Yeah,
narcissistic.
yeah, I know. Yeah. It all tells about
I couldn't stand it.
his non-football exploits. Yes, he was notorious for those as well. Then in the mid-1950s as well, the interstates were created, which really changed the nature of Metro Louisville.
I had a machine.
So we built all of these interstates, which I just drove out here on the Gene Snyder Freeway.
The one good idea Hitler came up with.
Yeah, the Autobahns back in Germany.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what Eisenhower had saw when he was in Germany. They were able to move the military around very rapidly due to those Autobahns. The Kennedy Bridge opened in 1963. You can see the flag there on the right, that's at half-mast. It was just a couple of weeks late after John F. Kennedy was assassinated.
Do you know, did they name that before or after he?
I want to say it was after.
It was, so it was in honor of that?
Correct, that is correct. It's my understanding, yes. It had no name up to that point. And suburban growth really started happening after the interstates were created. In the upper left-hand corner there, you see what was called the Lincoln Income Life Building. It then changed its name to Caden Tower. Now it's known as the Wright Tower. But you can see when it was built, there was nothing around it, just farmland.
That's Breckenridge Lane.
And then you
It
see,
is.
and then you see down below and all of the stuff built up around it. And then one of the more major suburban sprawl fights happened down near Anchorage. Reynolds Aluminum, which was based here in Louisville, wanted to build a research park out near Anchorage, but the residents of Anchorage did not want, they said, oh, it would bring suburban sprawl out here if we build this research park. Well, Reynolds got upset when it was denied the zoning change for that land, and so Reynolds picked up their toys and they went to Richmond, Virginia, and left the city. And did that stop suburban sprawl from happening around Anchorage?
Nope.
No, you can see it there. This is where the Reynolds, where EP Tom Sawyer Park is where Reynolds was supposed to have been. But yeah, suburban sprawl sprung up all around Anchorage. And we lost a great white collar, a lot of well-paying jobs to Richmond, Virginia because of this. Some more suburban sprawl things that happened. All the theaters downtown started to close and the theaters moved out to the suburbs. We had showcase cinemas that were built. And then the malls, the shopping malls, all the retail moved out from downtown out to the suburban area, St. Matthew's Mall, Oxmoor, and all that. We still had civil rights activities happening. Martin Luther King came to Louisville on numerous occasions. His brother was a pastor here locally at one of the churches.
I heard him preach 2 weeks before he drowned.
Oh, wow. Martin Luther King, well, he was assassinated.
No,
His
his
brother?
brother.
Oh, his brother.
His
Oh,
brother.
his brother drowned? I
And
was
I was the
remember.
only white person in church, and he preached about how whites weren't going to help you, and I wanted to just
Oh.
disappear.
Oh, geez. Oh. Well, we had the Parkland riots that happened. See those. Very sad, again, episode in Louisville history. We had some good things happen though. We had the zoo that was started in 1969, and I still think it's one of the best zoos in the nation. It was one of the first zoos that had open exhibits. They tried to minimize the barriers that held the animals within the cages there. So they really didn't have any bars, if you will. It was all sort of low-level barriers that they had for the animals. And you still go there and you walk around and it looks like the animals are just roaming free. They still do a very good job there at the zoo. And we started to revitalize downtown Louisville. On the left, the Gruen plan in the 1960s, the Galleria in the 1970s. And we had the River City Pedestrian Mall. Does anyone remember that?
Yes.
That didn't last very long. It was not the most successful thing. After a few years, they ripped it up and made it back into vehicular use.
What'd they do with the clock?
The clock was relocated several times. I may have it. Let me see if I've got it in my presentation. But it's back in storage now. But the clock kept moving around. Yes, the Louisville clock. They built more things, the Hyatt Regency, of course, the Convention Center, the Belvedere. That's what Louisville looked like in the early 1970s. Again, more racial unrest with the school busing. Gosh, it's been 70 years now. We're going on with busing, and I don't think it's been resolved yet, has it?
No.
It seems like every night on the newscast there's some sort of busing issue going on. We'll see how that all shakes out, but after 70 years you'd think they'd want to try to do something different.
Like let blacks live in white neighborhoods?
Yeah,
That would take care of it.
that's what they say. If you want to go to an East End school, live near an East End school.
Yeah.
Or West End school, either way. Muhammad Ali, of course, very popular in the 1960s and 70s. He was 18 years old when he won his gold medal. Can you believe that?
Amazingly.
18 years old. And then his funeral in 2016, which I think was the largest funeral in Louisville history. Secretariat won the 99th running of the Kentucky Derby. We're getting ready to have the 150th running of the Kentucky Derby here this year. And I'm not sure if I've mentioned this previously, but you see those color guards there along the stretch run there, Secretary. I was one of those color guards that day. I got to wear those red pants and those blue coats. I was a junior or senior in high school. I was a junior in high school at the time. And our class at St. X got selected to be the honor guards.
That's cool.
How that happened, I don't know.
Yeah,
But as high school students, we got paid like $25 to stand and watch the Secretariat run the race.
What a day to be
Yeah.
there.
But of
right?
course, we didn't know it at the time. We didn't know how famous, we were just high school students. We were just there to have a good time. But yeah, it's a memorable experience. Yeah, you can see. And I'm not exactly sure where I was standing because we would rotate around every hour or so. They would have us rotate around so we wouldn't be falling over from just standing still. But yeah, we were there. We got to see famous Secretariat. That was 71 years ago. No, 51 years ago. Let me get that right. Then, speaking of 50s, 50 years ago, this April 3rd, was the 1974 tornado.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, a lot of devastation. Here's a before and after. Amy, I'm not sure if you can give me a cup of water or something. I got a little frog in my throat.
I'm right back.
Sorry. More devastation here at Cherokee Park and Eastern Parkway.
That's
where I was.
Jim.
Would you like a lozenge?
No, that's okay, it's just some water. I should have gotten some previously.
Jim.
Speaking of sports and all that, we had the world champion Kentucky Colonels, ABA champions, back in 1975. Again, that was 70 years ago. Again, that's
Who's that good
50 years ago.
coach?
What's that again?
Who's that good looking coach?
I think it was Hubie Brown. Hubie Brown was the coach.
Wow. Crazy name. Nice.
But yeah, 50 years ago, Artist Gilmore. And I got to stand up against Artist Gilmore, and I'm 6'3", and standing up, he was like 7'3" or 7'4". I mean, he was this humongous person. And I want to make reference to the University of Louisville champions. And I still include our championship in 2013,
Hey,
which,
Steve,
yes.
he was just wondering if you wouldn't mind moving back
Yeah.
a little bit so you can see the screen. Thank you.
Yeah. In 2013, the University of Louisville had its championship removed, which I think one day we'll get that championship back. I think totally bogus
Better
that
believe
the
it.
reason why they took that championship away from us, but I think they will reinstate that at some point. Thank you. One of the things I think that really brought downtown back was establishing the Science Center on West Main Street. By the way, urban renewal wanted to demolish all of West Main Street. They wanted to tear it all down. All these buildings that you see here, they wanted to demolish. Fortunately for us, the money ran out. They couldn't do it. So they were debating where to put the Science Center. Should it go out by the zoo? Should it stay downtown? And by putting it downtown, really created our museum row that we have there today.
I used to work there.
Yeah, it really turned out well. So I'm glad that they did that.
I take adult friends there.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it turned out very well. And then, of course, they put the Kentucky Center for the Arts down on Main Street as well in 1983. Even had a big debate between Reagan and Mondale. Built some signature office buildings downtown, Humana and Aegon. And unfortunately, another infamous date in Louisville history is when the Courier-Journal was bought out by Gannett. That was what, 40 some odd years ago. Our airport kept expanding. You see it there in 1970 as opposed to 50 years later in 2020. UPS has really transformed the airport there. And then our waterfront has really changed over the years. Here are several proposals to redevelop it in 1929, 1957. They kept coming up with all these great ideas of how to improve the riverfront. So here's an aerial view of the waterfront. This was about in the this would be in the mid-1980s, looking down on the waterfront with Spaghetti Junction there and all the industrial uses along the waterfront. They had scrap metal companies, sand companies, fuel, gasoline storage areas. It was just a total industrial wasteland our waterfront was. And then we turned it into this green front door mat, as I call it. It really was transformed. I was part of the design team that helped create all of this. I joined them back in the 1980s, and it took us about 20 years or so to make it look like this. But it really is a nice waterfront that we have there now.
It is, I love it.
Then we merged city and county. Gosh, that's been, what, 23 years ago?
Yeah.
Gosh. Jerry Abramson and Rebecca Jackson and then Dave Armstrong.
Her mother was here.
And we built Yum Arena in 2010. We were just there recently. We go to the U of L games there downtown. Then another major transformation was a building of the Parklands of Floyd's Fork. Here was the groundbreaking in 2011, and by 2016 it was pretty much completed. Built a whole park system 20 miles long within 5 or so years.
Wow.
Just phenomenal. David Jones, who's depicted there second from left with the sunglasses on, he was a major benefactor of the Parklands of Floyd's Fork. It was sort of a duplicate of our Olmsted Parks. For the inner city was the Olmsted Parks, and then for the suburbs it was the Parklands of Floyd's Fork. Here are some more images of it. Just fantastic. It's David Jones there on the left and his son Dan Jones. They were the major catalyst of the parks. Me and my wife's name are on this fountain here. They have a fountain that indicates all the people that were involved and benefactors, and it's been one of the best experiences of my life being part of the Parklands of Floyd's Fork. It's just a beautiful system. Lamar Jackson, a Heisman Trophy. Let's hope he can get it done. Hopefully he can get this Super Bowl here coming up. Be fantastic if he can do that. He did great just the other day. Now then, we've always talked about how to get across the water, across the Ohio River.
That first picture.
They talked about a steam duck flying across the Ohio.
I like how they taste, but I wouldn't want to ride it.
And then talking about tunneling under it in the 1860s. Of course, that was before ventilation systems were perfected, and anyone traveling on a train under that length of under the river would have been asphyxiated by the time they got to the other side. But anyways, creative ways of thinking about how we're going to get across the Ohio River. Well, finally, we built some new bridges. The Lincoln Bridge there in downtown in 2015, and of course the Lewis and Clark Bridge on the east end there in 2017. Whiskey Row. There's what it looked like in 2009, 15 years ago, and what it looked like just 10 years later in 2019. They had a major fire there in 2015, and here's another photo of what it looks like today. Believe it or not, the previous mayor wanted to demolish all of Whiskey Row, just wanted to tear it all down and rebuild something else there.
Which mayor?
Mayor Fisher.
Damn, I voted for him.
Yeah, he wanted to tear it all down in 2012, I think it was, is when he proposed just getting rid of it all. And we horrible preservationists say, no you don't. We think it could be, and now it's one of the most popular tourist attractions of Louisville. Again, all the Bourbonism came out of all this. We have Brown Foreman, the Old Forester Center downtown. You got Angels Envy downtown now. A lot of bourbon attractions. A lot of it rolled out of this Whiskey Row area. So we were fortunate to do that. We're building a lot of hotels in Louisville. Here's some of the ones that have been built or proposed. And the reason for all these hotels is you wouldn't believe how many people come here for this bourbonism, come here to visit our bourbon things. I saw 3 gentlemen in downtown Louisville not long ago. They were looking for some directions. I got talking to them. They were from London, England, and they had come here specifically to tour our distilleries. So we bring in people from around the world for the bourbon parts of this area. We still have racial unrest. It seems like it's been a constant theme here since the Jim Crow era, but the Breonna Taylor and the racial justice protest of 2020 that tragically happened. And still there's ramifications to downtown due to all that. I have not talked too much about our medical history, but prior to 1960, we had hospitals distributed throughout the downtown area. There was no central location for the medical facilities. As you can see, Norton's actually was located in old Louisville. At one time, Baptist was in the Highlands. St. Anthony's, they're also in the Highlands. St. Joe's out on the Eastern Parkway area. St. Mary and Elizabeth in the West End. Then there was a proposal to consolidate all of the hospitals into a medical center in the 1962 era, early 60s. And so this is an aerial view, but all the hospitals, Norton's, Jewish, University of Louisville, and all their ancillary medical office buildings and clinics were all located in this one area of downtown. We also had a lot of unbuilt projects. These were all tall buildings, major projects that were planned over the last few years that never happened.
Oh yeah, Museum Plaza, I
Yeah,
remember that.
Museum
I
Plaza.
wanted
That's
that.
when I was working at the Science Center when they were talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone laments that.
I'm interested to see what they're gonna do with the Grinstead Lexington Road.
Yeah. We'll see if it gets built in our lifetime, right? But here are some major projects that are being built right now. The VA hospital is going up as we speak. Norton's is building a new hospital in the West Louisville area off Broadway. University of Louisville Hospital is building a major addition to it. And then the waterfront is being expanded out to the West End area.
Oh, that's awesome.
So these are some really nice projects that will come online here in the next few years. And that's what the Kentucky Derby looked like in 2023. And contrast that to that photograph I showed at the very start of what it looked like in 1924. You can see that it has really changed a lot in the past 100 years. And it continues to change. They're building that huge new paddock area there, and it's just phenomenal. And I just hope they can keep it going. I know horse racing has had all sorts of issues of late, and we'll just see how long that can continue. So there's the skyline of Louisville in 2023 era there, as opposed to what it looked like in 1924 and in the 1800s.
I was thinking about the old fountain too.
Oh yeah, the Falls Fountain,
Yeah.
the late 1990s.
That was when I first moved here. I was like,
Oh.
oh, it's so beautiful.
That didn't last long,
Nope.
did it? So again, this is a chronology of what we just experienced. We talked about the Jim Crow laws of the early 1900s, then through the 1937 flood, World War II, urban renewal and suburban sprawl era, the zoo opened, the tornado, the basketball and sports, and the Humana building, and Gannett and Waterfront Park, and all. So covered a lot of ground there in the past 100 years. And by the way, all of these videos are up on YouTube now. So if you ever want to revisit what I've spoken about here, you can go to the Louisville Historical League YouTube channel. We have over 60 videos there of Louisville history, and this video will be up there in the next day or so.
Cool.
That's the end of part 3. And there we go.
Thank you.